Hello and welcome to the Leo Beck Institute website page for our book club. Our book club, the latest choice is The World of Yesterday by Stefan Zweig. And we are happy to have a special guest with us for our two meetings about this book. Our guest is going to be George Prochnik, who I'm with today. And he has written a biography of Stefan Zweig, The Impossible Exile, Stefan Zweig at the End of the World, for which he received the Jewish Book Award for biography memoir in 2014, as well as some other notable mentions. He's also done a lot of other writing as well, and you can read more about him on this website page. So welcome, George. And I just wanted to provide a brief introduction of you to the people who are planning to attend the book club. So I prepared a basic thing to talk about, a basic question. I was going to ask, in your opinion, how do you think The World of Yesterday speaks to the contemporary reader today? And further on that, why are you interested in and find value in The World of Yesterday?
Thanks, Michael. Well, first of all, I think that Zweig's intention with the book was very much a didactic one. It's not a typical autobiography. He wasn't. People can turn to the book and find themselves wondering where the very naked confessions of self are. It's not like Rousseau. It's not like some of the autobiographies that we're used to today that really focus on scandalous, perhaps, or at least all bearing disclosures of some sort. What Zweig was trying to do when he wrote this memoir, which was critically right at the end of his life. In fact, he was working on it almost up to the very end when he committed suicide in Petrópolis, Brazil in 1942 in February. He was trying to gather together everything he'd learned about what Europe had done right and where Europe had failed and allowed forces of nationalism, forces of racism, all the kind of seething hatreds that culminated in fascism, Hitler, Nazism, and the decimation of European culture. He was trying to gather everything together that he'd learned about what went right and what went wrong in the hopes that he could transmit this to the future and that the lessons would be ones that those charged with rebuilding society, civilization from the ashes would be able to learn from and in fact feel inspired by, I think. So the book's relevance today is, I think, especially acute because we clearly are living in a moment of enormous volatile change. None of us can see today what society is going to look like a few years from now. But clearly, this is a massive transformative moment with grave risks and I believe some opportunities as well for rethinking where we are. And each section of Zweig's memoir is structured very carefully, almost like a series of allegorical mise-en-scenes to show us what he tried to do himself as a humanist and as a lover of literature and life's finer pleasures, and the forces that he contended with, both in himself and his contemporaries, that made realizing the more idealistic hopes of his generation so difficult.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to ask, since we're on this subject, this wasn't a planned question I had, but it actually makes me think of this work as a biography. And I think many people have written about Zweig and the various biographies he wrote about numerous historical figures and how much they're fact and how much they're fiction. And I wondered, in a way, as someone who studied Zweig, what you feel about his own interpretation of his life. That's a big question, I realize.
I think it's a big and it's a great question, and one I hope that we delve into in the book club. I think that in some ways he was more objective with his own life than he was with certain, at least certain of the historical figures he chose to narrate the lives of. I mean, his biographies are often quite propulsive, and people have been rediscovering them in recent years, particularly the biography of Marie Antoinette, which was the basis for, in fact, the most, I think the most expensive Hollywood film of the 1930s was a film very much taking his life version of her story. So those are written with a kind of, potboiler is the wrong metaphor, but they're driving in their sheer focus on event much more than interpretation. His memoir is a more sober document, and also where he shades the truth. And there's one particular point that I won't go into now. It's a bigger story, but in terms of his own position in the First World War, I think we can forgive him because it's less a matter of trying to inflate or whitewash his own reputation than, again, to create a very targeted, I mean, I refer to it in my book as almost a message in a bottle to the future. So he's oddly able to be almost more impersonal, I think, about his own life than he was about some of the characters who he tries to absolutely immerse himself in the manner of the fictional author, which he was at heart.
Right. Oh, okay. Well, thank you for joining us today. And I hope that everyone out there who's going to come to the book club is prepared and ready for some good discussion about the world of yesterday. So thank you.
Thanks. I'm looking forward to it.